Okay, so I just filmed the last little update. Now we're going to talk about this here clownfish and my wife's trip to the store yesterday before I explain a new project I'm going to work on to get the fresh water that I add to the fish tank cleaner before I add it. So basically, I don't have an RO unit. I use distilled water. Okay, this particular one's from Family Dollar. Um, I don't have a preference as far as brands go. If you look, you can see the type of cleaning that they do to the water. So this is steam distillation, micron filtration, UV light, and ozonization. Okay, so basically you count because it's all going to be the same things. These are 4 out of the 5 best things. Um, the only other thing they could really do is run it through carbon. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm just kind of going off memory. But steam distillation, micron filtration, ozonization, UV sterilization, that is a good 4 different types of filtration to look for your distilled water. But while that will get most of the heavy metals out and some of the phosphates, the reason why I have this algae problem is because of that water, because of the phosphates in that water. So, a while back, and this was years ago, maybe like 3-4 years ago, I had this dream where I was in a Petco that had salt water. And I thought that idea was ridiculous because them big chains don't usually carry salt water anymore. But it was a Petco. I'd never been in a Petco before. And well, the reason why is because I didn't think any of them had salt water. And I saw this cute little cinnamon clownfish. Just adorable. And only $20. And for some reason I knew I had a refugium that I needed to set up. Okay, so let me go ahead and walk you through my house. This will save me like a whole lot of time. Instead of having to edit the video, I just close the lens cover. Oh look, now we're waking back up from the dream. Good morning! Okay. Alright. So, I saw this grass. And those of you who keep aquariums are already like, that's freshwater. Because yes, this is freshwater. It says New Zealand on it. And as you may have heard, we like New Zealand. We're from New Zealand. Well, we kind of met there, lived there as children. This lifetime. And so it was kind of this situation where you're in the dream making a bad decision and you can't stop yourself from doing it. And you're like just, cold sweating in bed and whatever. Because, this is wrong, Well, so I remember buying this grass and like, I don't know, I almost kind of remember like being made fun of by myself for buying the grass. Because yes, my wife didn't realize that that's freshwater. They had a big tank of freshwater stuff with freshwater plants in it. But she thought, it's from New Zealand. The fuck kind of freshwater grass they got growing in New Zealand? Which seems remotely logical. But, She had apparently had a long day at work. So, having made this mistake has given me a brilliant idea. I didn't do much Googling to see if anybody's done this before, but it seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm going to convert this little guy here to freshwater. And I'm going to grow plants. Nothing but plants. It's going to be a freshwater refugium. So what I can do is solve my problem before it happens. See, the distilled water still has the phosphates in it. And the phosphates feed all this algae. Okay, and you can, you're not talking about getting rid of all of it. You're still going to have enough phosphate in there to grow your plants, and some corals even require a little bit of phosphate. Okay, but this is the whole reason why I like doing the natural method, is because I don't want to remove too much different stuff. And if you use carbons and different things like that indefinitely, like I run them when I set up a tank, okay, that's ChemiPure Elite right there. I run them when I set up a tank, but I don't like keeping them in there because they take other chemicals. They take your trace minerals and your vitamins out of the water. So what I'm going to do is set this up freshwater, and I'm going to be adding my nutrients to it a little bit at a time, like maybe just a couple of drops of nutrients in each gallon when I change it out. So basically I'll have this filled up with my distilled water, and once a week I'll probably need a gallon of fresh water for evaporation from the tanks in the living room. Okay, and once a week I'm going to mark on one of these gallons that this is the clean, purified water. And I'll take it out of here and use, just distilled water again. Either from Family Dollar or Walmart or whatever. This is Walmart brand. Family Dollar brand in the living room. We got Walmart out here. And these freshwater plants from Petco are going to remove the phosphates while the water is still fresh. So basically it's just an extra refugium that's going to be kind of sterile and sanitary, and I'm not sure how good of an idea it is, but it just seems to me like I'm going through a whole lot of trouble with phosphates just by topping off my fresh water. So if I had a refugium just for the fresh water, before it even got introduced to the big tank at all, it'd be the grass right here is going to absorb phosphates and like other heavy metals that you might find in water that get away from the filtration. See, let's compare the two types. Steam distillation, micron filtration, and ozonization. So great value. Great value is probably where I got all this fucking hair algae from. Because they don't have UV sterilization. But I know that I've seen different labels change over the years. Like the process changes or whatever. I guess who they buy their water from changes. Every now and again. Could possibly. Whatever. But, yeah, that UV sterilization. See, what it does is it cleans the microbial life and all the different seeds and spores and shit out of the fish tank. So all these seeds and spores that gave rise to all this algae right here could have very easily came from and been propagated by and been definitely made worse by the glass is dirty, by the lack of ozone filtration on that water. So it's like this tank down here is designed to absorb phosphates whenever I have, you know, a water change, or, you know, it has been what's been absorbed or trying to absorb the phosphates as I add my freshwater top-offs. But if I get that little freshwater refugium and let the water cycle through those plants for a week before adding it, I think I can get the distilled water to a better quality than what I've been using, and probably a better quality than people with really expensive reverse osmosis units use. Store-bought distilled water is a little more expensive than tap water, but micron filters, little RO units that people buy to filter their own water, they don't last forever. The media needs to be replaced, yada yada yada. And, well, a little 2-gallon freshwater tank with some plants in it just seems like a cheap, easy way to maintain some freshwater purification. So that's what we're going to do. And it all started with the dream a couple years ago about a cute clownfish, a maroon clownfish of all things. And wound up embarrassing myself, which wasn't myself, in the dream by buying freshwater grass for a saltwater tank. But now we figured out a way we can use the freshwater grass for the saltwater tank. And who knows, maybe I'll find some other little pretty freshwater plants at that place where my wife can actually find anything, you know, short enough to go in that little guy. And finally gonna buy a real light for that thing. And hopefully the whole theory is the plant growth is going to absorb all the shit that I don't want that's making this algae. The phosphates and the heavy metals and stuff, okay, in the freshwater before I put it in the tank, and into the saltwater tank. And then hopefully this freaking algae will clear up. Look at that, it's like an ocean of algae. This is Gulf of Mexico freaking green hair algae, the kind you see on the rocks on the piers. And it is nasty. This rock here has so much life on it, the algae can't even attach. But these rocks were kind of dead cured. So anywhere where the coralline didn't start growing back, yep, hair algae. And I can't wait to see this plant in action. I'm about to go to the little Pet Sense. They should have freshwater stuff at Pet Sense right around the corner. Let's see if I can buy this stuff. It's black substrate sand, kind of. It's supposed to go in the bottom of a freshwater tank. And I'm gonna have to take the salt out of that tank and probably just put it back in this tank where I got it from. I mean the sand, salty sand out of that tank. Put it in this tank. Put it back in that tank where I got it from. clean out that filter really good, and hopefully just a little bit of extra salt residue won't hurt, which it shouldn't. That particular type of grass is supposed to like a little tiny bit of salt in the water anyway, so should work out just fine. And once that stuff starts growing, you know, presumably the theory is, if the plants grow, they took shit out of the water. So then the water is cleaner. Because, you know, things without shit in them generally are. Anyway. So, that's all for the new freshwater top-off refugium idea, inspired by the clownfish dream and the purchasing of freshwater grass, thinking it was saltwater grass. And hopefully by this weekend I'll actually have some saltwater grass growing back in this corner here where it's supposed to. And then all this pain in the ass hair algae will start to dissipate. See, the stuff that the snails eat. Okay. They're eating basically the baby stalks of the hair algae that grows in the glass. And they eat lots of other different types of small microbial algae. Okay. Well, as they eat that and absorb the minerals into their shell and whatnot, some of it they shit out, some of it grows in different places. Okay. So the idea is what they shit out that becomes food for plants eventually progresses into the macroalgae or the caulerpa. Okay. By reducing the more heavier minerals that are dissolved in it, that are dissolved in the organic matter that they're eating. And in addition to that, the phosphates, basically, as they eat the algae, instead of it growing back, as the phosphates cycle out of the tank, you're going to have less of this growing and more of this growing. Because basically, as good plants take over, there's less food for the crappy plants. And little by little, the snails process out your algae and your crappy plants and your hermit crabs too. The hermit crabs are the only hope for this sand up here. Hermit crabs and Narcillurus snails stir up the sand, but the hermit crabs are sitting there going through rock by rock and eating hair algae off of them. Okay. And as they do that, instead of growing back more hair algae, the idea is you want it to slowly grow into these plants instead. And then eventually you don't have the hair algae problem. And if, like me, you perpetuate your own hair algae problem by using store-bought distilled water and not checking the label for UV sterilization for God knows how long, or just saying fuck it, I don't care. Because, yeah, clearly I didn't care for a very long time. Well, the phosphates that you keep adding, if you just use the distilled water, or even if it doesn't have that extra level of filtration, or does not have that extra level of filtration, regardless, it's going to have phosphates in it. That's all. The whole objective of this whole bottom thing, the whole objective of it, is to absorb all that shit with plants. So this doesn't happen. And see, another thing is chemicals like this. Pull that here. Chemicals like this add phosphates. Okay, these are kind of the same thing. That's a Hagen product, and that's a Seachem product. And then the one on the right is a more complex thing. These don't really cause algae problems, but this one here, while it is a great supplement to add for keeping corals and anemones alive, okay, it does add phosphates and can cause red cyanobacteria, which is that kind of hazy red looking stuff. It's sitting down there with the fish food. And wow, y'all didn't eat much of that food I gave you earlier. I need to, I don't know, I think I might put all this fish food in here because this is a much easier dose. See, this is made by Hagen. Okay, they've done this properly. And you can feed how many fish you want to feed, you know, like if you don't have a lot of fish, you could just open it up that much in one tap, you know. And this guy here, I've been having to use chopsticks. And this wasn't sealed properly. I'm not particularly pleased with the quality of this. It comes from Tylenol. It comes from Tylenol? No, it comes from Thailand. And, yeah, apparently Eric DeBay packaged it because it's fucking the little metal thing on the inside was shaped like a roulette wheel. It didn't fucking work. So anyway, this guy here, I have my older bottle, and for some reason they stopped making this top. So this top right here didn't even come on this bottle. This top came from a previous bottle, and now this top is about to go on this bottle. But this stuff here, okay, I got the ingredients right there. So calcium chloride, cobalt chloride, iron, lithium chloride, magnesium chloride, magnesium something. What is it? Nickel, ooh, potassium, chloride, iodide, sodium, strontium, zinc, copper, EDTA. I didn't realize I had the copper in there. Does not contain phosphates, but it might be the copper actually. So anyway, the idea is this is very, very rare trace minerals, and you want to only use a couple of drops at a time. Okay, I literally just like a couple of drops in this in the tank every week maybe. All right, just as little as you can add as possible. All right. And then these raise calcium, strontium, and magnesium, both of them, okay? And what that does is all your hard corals, all your pretty invertebrate stuff, that is the vitamins. That's what plants crave, okay? That's electrolytes for coral and coralline algae, so all this pretty pink stuff that used to grow on my rocks and all over this rock, well, the hard stuff, not the sponges. And there's some starting to grow on here a little bit. So that feeds that stuff and all your regular corals. And I'm sure it helps these guys grow pretty shells. That is such a cute, curious clownfish. She's just all up in the front of the tank. Just, hey, look at me. What are you doing? What are you filming? You got a joke for that? Anyways. So this one here, I'm going to start adding to the freshwater. 2 drops every week into that little 2-gallon, and I'm going to let it sit in there so some of the stuff can be absorbed by those plants in there. So I'm going to be adding a saltwater supplement to freshwater fugel grass or whatever, New Zealand, some kind of grass. I forgot what the label said. If you don't remember what the label said, rewind, because I think I showed the label on the campaign. Alright. And then that's going to cycle out for 1 week at a time. Then I'm going to have a marked off jug for the purified water. And I thought of this idea, well, I confirmed that I'm going to do this idea in real time. People say adding salt to little freshwater plants is okay. So I'm going to add this little salt right here. And hopefully the freshwater plants will absorb that copper before I get it into my tank. And I still think, most people think there's phosphates in there. So regardless of what's in there, we're going to absorb some of the harsher stuff out of there. But I tell you what, this stuff can make the difference between really beautiful, really healthy corals and not. But overdosing it will kill anemones in a hurry and will cause lots of hair algae growth, or worsen hair algae growth and cyano, the red stuff algae. Not the clownfish, not the fish food, this purple mist right there. That's cyanobacteria. That's supposedly what all life evolved from, if you're a fucking science person, okay? You think you evolved from that shit? I wish you well when you fucking reincarnate back into it. Because that's disgusting. Anyways. Clownfish says, I did not evolve from cyanobacteria. I just happen to be maroon as well, by coincidence. Yes. And the clownfish also says, this guy's been babbling on long enough, so the video is over now. And on that bombshell, it's time to end. Like and subscribe. Peace.